name is Kabir Alwalia, and this is my twin brother Kerman Alwalia. And we're switching things up a little bit on today's show. We brought us very special, one of our closest friends, Mr. Nishad Mysore, to be on our show today. And so he's here with us, and although he's not that educated on shoes, which is a big part of our show, he is more than educated in basketball, so you guys will get to see that. And then maybe you guys can test to see if he should become a permanent guest on our show or not. So before we get to introducing the topics, you may notice that something else that we have going on is the pretty cool jerseys. Well, today at our school was Throwback Thursday. Yes, we're all still high schoolers and we're normal high schoolers. So we're wearing our special throwback jerseys and the dope threads are on. So I'm just going to go ahead and introduce some of the topics that we have for you guys today. The first topic, the NBA, they recently tested in the Boston Celtics Brooklyn Nets preseason game, a 44-minute game, which shortens the game length, and a couple NBA players have responded to that with their opinions, and we'll give you our own opinion on that. And then a little bit later, we will be talking about Kevin Durant's injury. Obviously, he's going to miss up to 8 weeks with a Jones fracture, and obviously we're very concerned about Kevin Durant. And we're just going to give you our input about how it affects the MVP race and how it'll affect the Thunder and their quest to winning the championship or representing OKC in the championship. And you know, to top it all off, at the end of the show, we got the upcoming releases that we always give you guys. And last but not least, we got the sneak of the week this year, which is the Pearl Foamposites, one of my favorite shoes ever. So that will all be coming up, and I hope you guys enjoy. So like I said, the NBA recently tested a 44-minute game as opposed to a 48-minute game in the preseason matchup versus the Celtics and the Nets. Now, they just did that off of pure speculation. They don't know what they're going to do with it, but a couple people, such as LeBron and Dirk Nowitzki, have been asked what they think of it, and they've mostly been in favor of it. So first I'm going to ask Kerman, and then Nishad can go. What do you think of this whole 44-minute limit in each game?
Well, Kabir, I'm kind of opposed to the 44-minute length of each game, but I am in favor of what Dirk Nowitzki and LeBron James have been suggesting, and that's shortening the NBA season. I think Dirk said it best. He said that you don't need an 82-game schedule just to prove who the best player is. You know, the regular season is just meant to set up for the playoffs, and there's really no further result of the regular season besides setting up the seeds for the playoffs, because that's really what counts. Most superstars actually just take the regular season off. They don't take it as seriously, and they just kind of take it up to the next level whenever it comes playoff time. So you're seeing this happen with all these players that are saying, you know, of course we're in favor with the shortened season. LeBron actually added fuel to the fire. He said, I was actually content, I'm paraphrasing, he said, I was actually content with the 66-game lockout season that wasn't, except for the back-to-back-to-backs and all those stuff. And LeBron also said, you know, the league should be protecting its prize, and its prize is the players. And I completely agree with that, because I think fans watch the NBA, you know, just because of the players. And, you know, the regular season, it's just having it so long just adds potential for a player to get injured. And you don't see all these other sports that have all these extended regular season games. Well, at least the sports that are less demanding than basketball, such as baseball, you know, that's the only exception that has such a lengthy regular season. But you see sports like football and hockey, they all have very short regular seasons, because it's really what the playoffs that really do matter to the players. And I think the league should take a look at their policies, and they should just kind of reform it and shape it and reshape it into what the players, to the best benefit of what the players would prefer.
Okay, first of all, let's take a look at this analytically. What we know, the NBA is a business, and I don't see the NBA shortening, even though I believe that the NBA should shorten games and the amount of games in a season. I don't see it happening, because if we look at the NBA as a business, with an 82-game regular season, not including the playoffs, the NBA gets so much money. Obviously, we saw the 9-year, $24 billion TV contract that they extended with ESPN and TNT and all them. But if there's an 82 games in a regular season, that's more games for the NBA to get money. That's more games on TV. That's more games for the teams to get money. More games for the NBA to get money. So if we look at it from the NBA standpoint, it is not in their favor at all, because it loses them money. But And also, if we look at it from the fan standpoint, fans like watching their favorite teams. So, me personally, I'm never against watching 82 games of my favorite team playing. I enjoy it, and you never know, fans might be opposed if the NBA opts to reduce the number of games to 66 or something. So, from the fan standpoint and from the NBA standpoint, it's not a huge plus, but what we have to put above all else is the condition of the players, because although the players are millionaires and are making so much money, they're still human beings who need to be protected. We see players, we've had players in the past who have suffered injuries like Brandon Roy with like no cartilage in his knees now, who have suffered injuries because of their dedication, their whole life dedication to the game of basketball. And because of the amount of dedication that these players give to the game, I feel like the NBA should return the favor and kind of lessen the burden on the players and lessen the wear and tear that they receive from an 82 game, 48-minute season. So, in my opinion, I think that for the sake of the players and for the sake of their health and just long-term physical intactness, I think that the NBA should reduce the amount of games in the regular season, and probably also for the amount of games played in a game, or amount of minutes played in a game.
Okay, so my whole thing about the shortened season and the shortened minutes played in a game, it kind of, to me, sounds like LeBron and Dirk are kind of out of place in this whole situation. Michael Jordan actually came out and said when he heard that LeBron and Dirk were saying that we don't need 82 games to determine who's the best team, or that 66 games was a more preferable number of games to be played. He actually said, well, look, him and his era, which Michael Jordan always talks about his era all the time. Back then the players, they would go out and play regardless. Even if the 82 game season was 66 games, the games that weren't played, they would be in the gym working out and doing things like that. So he's got a good point when he says that. And the thing about it for me is that these players, for example, LeBron just recently signed a 2-year, $44 million max contract. He's getting paid. He's getting paid a good amount of cash, and he's also going to be, once that contract expires, with the new collective bargaining agreement, LeBron is going to make money through the roof with his next contract. I mean, he's still a young, spry player who's the best player in the league. So the way I see it is him talking about shortening the games and that, and all that kind of stuff combined just makes me, it kind of gives me a bad taste in my mouth, to be honest with you, because I feel like as a player, you're paid to play. And although it will take a toll on your body, as you gave the example of Brandon Roy, there's examples of players, for example, that played their entire 82 games, and they're still capable of coming and bringing it every day to the next game. I will admit that it's a taxing, it's a long, grueling season, but it's not football. Football is the players don't have that kind of contact to worry about. So the way I see it, LeBron and Dirk talking about, having a shorter season, I can get Dirk saying he's an old guy, he's got some old legs, he's probably tired, by the time he gets to around 66 games. But the fans deserve the 82-game season. The players are compensated for that 82-game season. And even if they weren't playing that 82-game season, they're going to be in the gym. They're all gym rats. They're competitors. Every time they step on the floor, and Kerman, you were talking about how the players themselves and the teams themselves don't really bring it. The superstars don't bring it until, around playoff time. The way I see it is these guys are competitors, period. I mean, every time they step on the floor, they want to play. I mean, come playoff time, the game slows down. It becomes more of a man's game. That's true. But during the regular season, it's a young man's, running man's game, and it's an important part of determining who really wins the entire season overall. So the way I see it, LeBron and Dirk, it's a little bit too much talking, a little bit too much, too much in front of the, too much stuff in front of the camera. I agree with Michael Jordan on this one. I think that they should, keep quiet and get ready for this coming 2014-15 season. And we should have a lot of good basketball to be played. So.
Nishad, I just have a quick thing to add. As when you mentioned Michael Jordan's quote, I don't really think that applies to the NBA today. Just because the game back then was at a so much slower pace, and you know, the NBA now, it's very up and down. You see teams like the Phoenix Suns and the Golden State Warriors just running up and down the court. You know, back then, they believed in a very standard, you know, half-court offense, like get to the ball to the big man, post up, score, you know, repeat. You know, that's pretty much how I see it. So, and also as a fan, as you were saying, like the fans deserve to see, you know, an 82-game season.
Yeah.
I think 66 games is a lot to watch, just in general. And me as a fan, I'd much rather watch 66 games and see a star player on my team play healthy for the full season, rather than potentially a star player getting injured, having one injury in 1 minute of one game, and just pretty much destroying the entire season for the team. So, and I think the 66 games is fine. You can still start the season at the same time, and just end it a bit earlier. You know, just have the playoffs, like have the finals maybe in like May or. Yeah, and it's only really 16 games that you're taking away to make it into 66. So it's not that much if you look at it in perspective. So.
See, look, my rebuttal to that would be, if you're talking about going back to when MJ played, Charles Barkley played, those guys played, you know, the bad boy Pistons. Yes, the game was slower back then. It was 3 times more physical, you know? And for me, you know, to hear MJ and these older guys talk about, look, we had 82 games a season, and I know for a fact it was more physical back then than it is now. Now it's a running game. For me to hear them say that and say, look, I mean, we didn't take the easy way out, it makes sense to me that they shouldn't, today's generation of basketball players shouldn't be allowed to take the easy way out and just play 66 games. Now, as far as televised, 82 games is a lot to watch, 66 games. You know, I mean, how many of those games were really televised? You know, you can have like a lesser team, for example, the 76ers were not a top team last year, obviously, playing against the Bucks. Those kind of games aren't going to be televised. It's the marquee games that are televised regardless. So, I mean, there are two sides to every coin, but the way I see it is 82 games, it's been the standard, it's been that way since the league was conceived. There's no need to mess with it. The league is growing. It's getting more money. It's flourishing. I just don't see a need to touch it and mess with it. Yeah?
You know, one thing I think is that you always hear this with every single player, especially like the star players. You hear this. They always say in the beginning of the year when they get, let's say the Cavaliers, this new look Cavaliers lose like the 5th game of the season to the Minnesota Timberwolves or something like that happens. Obviously, media will be questioning LeBron or something like, how do you think your team can recover from this or whatever? And their usual answer is, you know, the whole season, it's a grind, it's a hustle, and I mean, it's a long, grueling season, it's a taxing season. So just like, we need to take away that aspect from them completely. We need to make the players feel completely comfortable, and we need them to know that they can consistently play the best of their ability every single game. And with 82 games, I mean, last year, even guys like LeBron James, who's indestructible, sat out last year in an 82-game regular season. Like, if there's 66 games, you might not see that. And, you know, Nishad, to you, you're a Spurs fan and you're a Ginobili fan, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, the Popovich will have them resting for, like, the last, like, 20 games of the season. Not resting completely, but playing really limited minutes. So, like, how much joy does that actually bring you watching this? I know you're a Spurs fan, so you like watching the whole team, but to other people who are just kind of, you know, player fans, not really NBA team fans, when they see their favorite player, maybe their favorite player is Tim Duncan, rested, then, you know, it kind of brings the joy, like, you know, it kind of ends the joy a little bit, and especially since it's towards the regular season, towards the end of the regular season where you're supposed to be building up hype for the playoffs. They kind of make it a little bit more like, you know, depressing and less fun towards the end of the regular season.
Well, see, if you go back to the lockout season a few years back, you're going to notice that even though the players played fewer games, when it came to crunch time and it was right back in the midst of the playoffs, the team still rested their marquee players. That's going to happen. That's not a number of games thing. That's just a conservation thing, just to play energy-wise, physicality-wise. For example, you mentioned that I was a Spurs fan. Absolutely true. But I'm also a huge Derrick Rose fan. And Derrick Rose, yes, he blew out his knee in 2012 in the first game of the first round of the playoffs. But then he came back, finished all that rehabbing, and then 10 games into the regular season, 10 games, only 10 games, blew out his other knee. So the way I see it is, you know, injuries in basketball, they can just happen. whether or not they happen like down the road or in the beginning of the regular season. So taking that into account, along with the fact that either way, with a shortened season or not, the players aren't going to be playing come that crunch. The marquee players will be getting less minutes come that crunch time. The way I see it is, go ahead and keep the season longer. If anything, spread out the dates. Maybe take the finals longer into the summer, and maybe give them less of an off season. But other than that, I don't see the need to shorten the season at all.
Okay, and just real quick, I'm gonna ask you guys. Give me one word for this question.
Okay.
Do you guys think that they should increase the break for the All-Star game?
Yes.
I would agree with that, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I just want to get that off the plate. So Kevin Durant recently underwent a successful surgery on his right foot after they found out that he has a Jones fracture. Now, we've seen guys who've had the same injury, such as, Yao Ming, Brook Lopez, kind of tall guys who are a little bit, like skinnier. Yao Ming wasn't skinny, but for how tall he was, his body build can really compensate for his height. So Kevin Durant is expected to miss up to 6 to 8 weeks, which is potentially 21 games if we're talking about the regular season. So I'm just gonna ask you guys, how do you think this will affect the outcome of the MVP race, and who could be a dark horse candidate, and how do you think it affects the Thunder's surge quest, competitive drive to come out of the West and represent the West in the finals?
So just a quick background on the history of the Jones fracture injury. Yao Ming and Brook Lopez, having both underwent surgery to repair that, they both actually had to have a second surgery. The Jones fracture is known to be an injury that comes back to haunt players. Like, once it happens and you get surgery, like, it'll be some random time in the regular season, you'll just tweak that bone again, something will happen, and you'll just have to get surgery again, like that. Like, I pray that doesn't happen to Kevin Durant. For all intents and purposes of us enjoying the NBA, and like for every fan of the NBA, we don't want to see that happen to Kevin Durant at all. But as for your question for the MVP race, I think this greatly impacts it. Just a quick stat here: Bill Walton was the last player to win MVP, despite having missed at least 20 games in the NBA season, and that was back in I think the 60s. Now Kevin Durant's slated to miss 20 to 21 games, so I think just by that logic, I'm taking him out of the MVP race. I'm sorry, Thunder fans, but that's just the way it is. And as for I think the only person who really is the favorite to win MVP right now is LeBron James, just because it's LeBron James. He's the best player in the NBA. But I think there are a couple of dark horse candidates, but the one that I'm just going to talk about really quickly is Anthony Davis. Now, Anthony Davis is showing tremendous signs of improvement in the FIBA World Cup. He dominated all the international teams, and given they're smaller, they're less strong, but it just showed Anthony Davis's growth in the game. And recently he just had a monster game in the preseason. I know it's preseason, but like it just showed like his tremendous array of moves. He can post up. He had 4 blocks in that game. He can shoot jumpers. Like, this dude is just ridiculous. And he's like 21, 22 years old. Like, Anthony Davis is actually the real deal. And I think this season is when that fact will actually come to light, and many people will realize how good Anthony Davis is. And for your second question, I think if God prevents, Kevin Durant getting a second injury, I think the Thunder will be okay come playoff time. I think they'll be back to normal selves. Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant have played with each other long enough to know how chemistry works. They'll mold together very quickly, and they'll have a lot of time in the regular season to get that fixed out. But I think the Thunder, you can expect them to possibly make it to the conference finals, and if Durant just comes back in like a monster form, maybe possibly even the finals. But we never know that, and I just pray that Kevin Durant doesn't get that same injury to come haunt him back in the future. But only time will tell.
Alright, so obviously this Kevin Durant injury is nothing that NBA fans like to hear. Everyone likes watching Kevin Durant play. He's such an outstanding scorer. He's like George Gervin, as people kind of compare him to. And he's a gifted player, and we all like seeing him play. However, I agree with you, Kermit. I don't think that Kevin Durant will end up being in the MVP conversation towards the end of the season. But this year, I sincerely think that the MVP of this year will be Blake Griffin, and I have my reasons why. LeBron James is the best player in the NBA, and we all know that. but he's on a new team with the Cleveland Cavaliers that has Kyrie Irving, Kevin Love, Deion Waiters, Tristan Thompson, Mike Miller, like the list goes on and on. Sean Marion even, and they're most likely going to get Ray Allen. There's just so many scores with LeBron. I think this is the year that LeBron kind of focuses on making his teammates around him better, kind of more a point guard's mentality and kind of filling up the stat sheet like he always does. I don't see him averaging like over 27 points a game, over 8 assists and 8 rebounds a game. I think he'll get more along the lines of, like maybe 22, 23 points a game, and I think I'll say his assists will be about the same, 7 assists and 6 rebounds or something. So I just don't think that that's like qualifies enough to win the MVP. But if we look at the guy who I picked, Blake Griffin, and if you looked at his season last year, he finished 3rd last year in the MVP voting. LeBron and Kevin Durant were dominant last year. They were completely dominant. So to see a guy like Blake Griffin appear in 3rd place, he should truly take it as an honor. I think that this is the year that Blake Griffin jumps in his development and excels. I think his free throw percentage will show it. His jump shot has shown it so far in the preseasons. He's been knocking down the mid-range a lot. He's even knocked down a couple threes. And from what Doc Rivers says, he's made pretty big improvements on defense. So I just see that Blake Griffin is, could kind of make the jump from a star, as most people will call him, to kind of a superstar who wins the MVP. I think that'll happen this year. I kind of think he'll win along the lines of, or I think he'll average along the lines of 24 points and 11.5 rebounds or something like that. So for right now, my pick is Blake Griffin. But if I had to pick people to threaten him, it would be his teammate Chris Paul, who's awesome. Like we all know how awesome Chris Paul is, or Carmelo Anthony. If the Knicks make that jump into the playoffs. To answer the second part of the question, I think that the Thunder, they'll go far in the playoffs because they will recuperate after Kevin Durant comes back. But I think they'll finish around, 3rd seed in the Western Conference. I see I'm still debating whether I see the Spurs or the Clippers as the first pick, but I know either of the two will be the top 2. I think the Spurs from last year winning the championship, although everyone always wants to repeat winning the championship, I think they've lost a little bit of the motivation that they had from last year from so bitterly losing the championship the year before. So I just think that, in my opinion, I think that this year, because of Kevin Durant's injury, earlier I picked the Thunder to go to the championship. I think that this year is probably the best chance for the Clippers to go to the Western Conference Finals and then beat whoever they play and then go to the finals. I just think the Thunder could get to the conference finals, but I just don't see them getting over the hump this year.
Okay, Kabir, first of all, let's not be blasphemous here. Blake Griffin is a superstar. He's not a star. He is a superstar. And 2, the Spurs will be on top of the Western Conference. Whether the 1st seed, 2nd seed, it doesn't matter. With a coach like Greg Popovich, if you're talking about motivating your players, you don't want to be worried about Duncan, Ginobili, and Parker. They'll be motivated. It's the younger guys. But I'm sure Pop will motivate them enough. But to get to the actual question, with Kevin Durant's injury, the biggest thing about it is a stress fracture. These types of stress fractures kind of occur in players who are much taller, a little bit more lengthier, but have a little bit more weight. So what surprises me is that Kevin Durant sustained this injury when the guys we were talking about earlier, Brook Lopez and Yao Ming, they don't have the same, they're much heavier than Kevin Durant actually is. So that worries me a little bit as far as just, this is the type of injury that can come back to haunt you, like Kerman said. It's not an injury that, with any injury, surgery can help it. It will heal it, but it's not going to be the 100% that it was before. Just as Derrick Rose and multiple other players that have gone through the same injuries. For example, Russell Westbrook had to get surgery 3 times on the same knee. Does that not mean he can come back and play at the same level that he was playing before? He can come back and play at the same level, but it can be debilitating. So as far as a dark horse candidate to win MVP, the guys that you mentioned, both LeBron and Blake Griffin, the thing about it is, those are guys that on their squad, those are stacked teams. When you're talking about the Clippers, Blake is going to have to compete with Chris Paul as far as who could win the MVP over there. I think they split the vote over there, to be honest with you. I see this as a season being where Chris Paul and Blake Griffin both come out of the gates firing, and they are ready to play. As far as LeBron goes, I think LeBron this time around, you know, when he was in Miami, you're talking about Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh, players that are just, you know, kind of getting out of their prime, to be honest with you. You know, they're players that have dealt with multiple injuries. They've played. They have a lot of mileage on their legs. They're coming out of their primes. They've had playoff experience. They've gone deep into the playoffs, 4 finals appearances. So that's why I think LeBron shouldered a lot and was able to really come out there and play that MVP game that he can play. But this time around it's a little different. Now that he's in Cleveland, what he has going for him are 2 stars. I would put them in the superstar category if they were on their individual teams, but this time around they're stars, 2 stars that are just now about to enter their prime, and they have not seen June basketball at all. So what that tells me is they're young, they're fresh. They're going to get theirs, and LeBron is going to have to do his best to assimilate and get his. So I don't see him averaging the 27 and 8 like he did seasons before. I see him averaging 25 and 6. Now, 2 points, is that a lot? No, but for LeBron, that's a dip in production on the offensive end. Defensively, he's still going to be the man. So I don't take LeBron and Blake Griffin as the favorites. I do, however, take guys who have the team to themselves as contenders for the MVP. As far as Kerman had mentioned earlier, he had mentioned Anthony Davis. If Anthony Davis is able to bring that Pelican team to the playoffs, I think, I mean, this kid could be the MVP. And I honestly believe he might be the favorite to win the MVP this season if he can stay healthy and maintain his production. Besides him, I'm going to actually have to go with that other bad boy in OKC. Russell Westbrook has the team to himself this time. And you know, we can sit and talk about Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant's team dynamic. When Russell Westbrook has the ball in his hands, I mean, it's something else. He's honestly one of the most amazing players I've ever seen. So I think as far as MVP goes, it's going to be a guy who's going to be the man on his squad. Carmelo, Russell Westbrook, or Anthony Davis. So to answer your second part of the question, how does this change the landscape of the Western Conference? Well, with Kevin Durant being out for 20 to 21 games, I don't see it taking the Thunder out of the top 4 at all in the Western Conference, because I believe in Russell Westbrook and I believe he's going to keep the Thunder on top of the West. But I don't see the Thunder being able to mesh and get over the hump come Western Conference Finals time, just because 20 games off. This is the first time Kevin Durant has really sat out in his career. I mean, for Russell Westbrook, that was a few years ago. He was a league Iron Man. I mean, he played 6 seasons with like no injuries practically. So I think that chemistry coming back, you know, having to get the ball back from Russell after, you know, him having the ball for so long, for 20, 21 games, I think that's going to be difficult for them to kind of get over that. I honestly think this time around it's going to be Spurs, Clips on top, throw in the Mavericks actually as well, but that's a discussion for another day. To answer your question, that's how it changes the landscape.
So guys, this is a segment of the show, as most of you know, where we kind of venture off from the basketball players and the basketball part of the NBA to the actual the shoes, the apparel that people wear in the NBA. And just a heads up, you know, Nishad doesn't know much about this,
Man,
so I think you'll sit out for this portion. But yeah, I think Kabir will tell you about some of the upcoming releases.
All right, so the main releases to keep your eyes on are on October the 24th. For some of you guys who may not know, there's a store based in New York called Kith, and they are having a collaboration with Adidas on the shoe that is the EQT Support 93. And they're collaborating with Adidas on a colorway called the NYC's Bravest, and they're a pretty cool shoe. They'll retail for $170. They're pretty unique in that the toe of the shoe is pure gold, and all the proceeds from the shoe goes to donations given to the families who were affected by 9/11 actually. So not only is it a nice shoe, but it's also for a good cause. And a little bit down the road in 1st of November, you have the Slam Dunk 6s, which I kind of mentioned in our previous video that they were coming out. They will actually be released along another pair of Jordans, the 29s, and in the same colorway. And the 6s themselves will be $250. Now, some details about the 6s. If you look at them, they're extremely unique. The box is basically a comic strip. The shoe is based off of a comic series. I'm not exactly sure what it's called, but it's a basketball comic series based from Japan. So that part of the comic series is all over the box and on the shoe as well, in 3M. So if you flash the shoe, you'll be able to see all the comics. And it's a really unique all red shoe, translucent bottoms, nice shoe. And the last thing that is coming out that you should keep your eye on. This is a shoe that we're all accustomed to, kind of a normal shoe. Are the gray toe 13s? Those are coming out on the 15th of November They haven't released a price yet, but I'm assuming it's going to be $170, just like all the other retros that come out. And everyone knows what the gray toe 13s look like. They have gray toes and accents of red on them, and they're a nice shoe. So if you guys are looking to cop any of those shoes, those are the dates, and I hope you guys get exactly what you're looking for. So this week's sneak of the week right here are the Pearl Foamposites. These are the ones that released, I don't exactly remember the year, it was 1998. I'm pretty sure it was 1997. So that's when these released. You can see a little bit of the yellowing. But, I'm just going to kind of give you a little bit of perspective. Right here with all of us, this is like, we kind of have the trifecta because I don't like to, boast or anything, but like I feel like I'm the most knowledgeable about shoes.
Right.
And then Kerman is kind of, he knows his shoes, and then Nishad, obviously he's not as knowledgeable, but that's also a good thing. So before like we get into the review, Nishad can quickly give us like a first impression. He's actually never seen the shoes before, so this is kind of just a first impression that Nishad can give you on the shoes.
Well, from first glances, it looks like a really interesting shoe. It's kind of heavy. I really like the pearl color, though. That's what really gets me. I think the design is kind of different. It almost reminds me of the Mellows. You know what I'm saying? It kind of like the Mellows that are out, now, kind of remind me of this shoe. But it's a classic. I definitely think this is something you could definitely rock with a pair of joggers and some nice socks. I like the shoe. I'm not saying I would copy, but I like the shoe. It's nice.
So I'm just gonna throw in my impression of the shoe. I'm not as big of a sneakerhead as my twin Kabir is, but I really like these shoes actually. Most of you guys, most real true basketball fans, have seen the movie He Got Game, which starred Ray Allen, Denzel Washington, and as Jesus Shuttlesworth, the iconic Jesus Shuttlesworth. And these are shoes that he wore throughout the entire movie, and that's where the shoe kind of gained prominence and why so many people wanted to buy them. So I like the shoes a lot because it's kind of, the pearl is it's a light color. It's pretty much white except with a little darker undertone, and with the mix of the black, I think fits well with really anything. Like you could really wear it with pretty much anything since it's like the white and black standard solid colorway.
But it's not just like regular white. I mean, it's like pearly white, so it's really clean.
Which is why it makes it stand out, which just adds like how cool it is. Yeah. And the soles are pretty cool, so it has that red hint. I know most people don't really look at the soles whenever you're actually wearing the shoe, but that's just a cool little thing to check out and kind of admire. Yeah.
Alright, so now for the expert's opinion. I'm gonna actually review the shoe for you guys, so I'll just put my laptop down so I can so y'all can see a little bit better. Alright, here's the shoe. You guys obviously saw it when my brother and Nishad gave their impressions on it. Okay, so I'll just kind of review the shoe for you guys. Obviously, the Foamposite is one of the most iconic shoes in the history of basketball shoes. It's one of the most recognizable, and in my opinion, although many people think it's kind of out there as a shoe, I like it. It's one of my favorite styles, and especially this colorway is one of my favorite. Obviously, you have the whole upper, which is all the same Foamposite upper, and it's that same pearl color that's consistent around the whole entire shoe. And back over here, you have the swoosh logo, and the swoosh logo isn't thing with the Foamposites, that the swoosh logo isn't embedded into the shoe. It's not like a part of the shoe. It's kind of like its own little item that's kind of sticking out of the shoe. So that black swoosh is just sticking out of the shoe right there. and you have the whole, like the laces. The toe is still the same, the Foamposite material with the pearl colorway, but then it's all, standard black, nubuck around, and then it has the black laces. The tab right here to kind of loosen your tongue it has the red stripes, again, all with Foamposites. The tongue itself is completely mesh. And then right here you have like a mini swoosh right there that you can kind of get a look at. And if you go to the back of the shoe, it says Foamposite right there, and it has a Nike sign in the back. So that's also, it's completely simple shoe, but yet although it's simple, it's a really nice shoe. And if you kind of go to the soles, these shoes are from 1997, so the soles will obviously be yellow. When whoever bought these when they first got them, they were obviously all blue, but now they're yellow. And you hear a lot of people saying that yellowing gives character, and I don't agree with that on all shoes, but for this shoe, I really think that the yellowing makes the shoe look better, which is an extremely weird thing for me to say. The shoe, I just think that the yellow goes really well with the pearl color, and it's not completely yellow. You still have a little bit of the blue on the shoe. And then, the rest of the sole, you have the Nike swoosh, and then you have the little pods, I guess, of red. And let me see if I missed one thing. One thing that's consistent about the foams is the carbon fiber that they all have right here in between the midsole and the sole. So you have the carbon fiber there. So that's the shoe. I like the shoe a lot. It's one of my most favorite shoes that I have. And I like it not only for its simplicity and its looks, but I also like it for its history. I think it's an extremely iconic shoe made from an iconic silhouette that is the Nike Foamposites. Alright, so we're wrapping up our show now. So, final thoughts, Carmen. I'm going to ask you, what do you think of Nishad's performance?
I think he did pretty well. It was better than I expected. Yeah.
Okay, so I completely agree with that. Nishad, do you have anything to say?
Hey, thank y'all for having me. I look forward to being on the show again. Maybe as a permanent member.
Alright, so like we always say, guys, please follow us on Twitter and subscribe to our videos on YouTube. And
thank you guys so much for joining, and we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.